He failed in business. He lost elections again and again. He faced heartbreak, depression, and humiliation. But somehow, he refused to give up. The world remembers him as a hero, but few know the pain that built him. This is the untold story of Abraham Lincoln, the man who failed his way to greatness. Imagine a cold, dirt-floored cabin in the rugged backwoods of Kentucky. The year is 1809. Into this world of stark poverty, a boy is born. No power, no privilege, no promise. This is Abraham Lincoln's beginning. His world was not one of comfort or opportunity. It was a daily battle for survival. Before he even turned 10, his mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was taken from him by a brutal illness. A young boy, left in a world that already felt cold and unforgiving, had just lost his first and greatest source of warmth. His father, Thomas, was a hard-working but uneducated man, barely able to sign his own name. He saw little value in books, believing that physical labor was the only path forward. But young Abraham was different. A fire had been lit inside him, a deep, insatiable hunger for knowledge. While other boys played, he worked, splitting rails and clearing land. But every spare moment, every ounce of leftover energy was dedicated to one thing: learning. He would walk miles, sometimes for hours, just to borrow a book from a distant neighbor. He read by the flickering light of the fireplace, long after the rest of his family was asleep, his face illuminated by the embers, his mind illuminated by the words on the page. Shakespeare, the Bible, history. These were his teachers, his mentors, his escape. He didn't have a formal school. He didn't have a tutor. He didn't have money. But what he had was a relentless hunger, a hunger to understand the world, to rise above his circumstances and to become someone the world could not ignore. This lonely boy, scribbling math problems on a wooden shovel with a piece of charcoal, was unknowingly forging the tools he would one day use to reshape a nation. His early life wasn't a story of disadvantage. It was a masterclass in resilience, teaching him that survival and greatness are earned, not given. With this foundation of grit, Abraham stepped into the world of adulthood, ready to make his mark. But the world wasn't ready for him. His first venture was a small general store in New Salem, Illinois. He poured his heart and savings into it, hoping for a modest success. Instead, the business failed spectacularly, leaving him with a mountain of debt that would take him nearly 2 decades to repay. He called it the national debt. It was his first major taste of public failure, a bitter pill to swallow. Undeterred, he set his sights on politics. Surely here his gift for words and his passion for people would find a home. In 1832, he ran for the Illinois General Assembly. He campaigned tirelessly, traveling from town to town, sharing his vision. He lost. The sting of rejection was sharp, but it didn't break him. He ran again 2 years later and won, beginning a respectable, if not stellar, career in state politics. But his ambition reached higher. He aimed for national office, running for a seat in the U.S. Congress. He won, serving a single term, but his principled stand against the Mexican-American War made him unpopular back home. He chose not to run for re-election, his first foray onto the national stage ending not with a bang, but a whimper. He returned to Springfield to practice law, and for a while it seemed his political career was over. Then came the U.S. Senate. This was the prize he truly coveted. In 1854, he ran and was defeated. In 1856, he sought the Republican vice presidential nomination and was again defeated. Then, in 1858, came the big one. A Senate race against the formidable Stephen A. Douglas. Their series of debates became legendary, showcasing Lincoln's powerful intellect and moral clarity on the issue of slavery. He poured everything he had into that campaign. He lost. Again. To the outside world, this was a pattern of defeat. a man reaching for things just beyond his grasp. Friends worried about him. He suffered from what was then called melancholy, periods of profound depression that would shadow him his entire life. After one particularly painful political loss and a broken engagement, he wrote, "I am now the most miserable man living." It felt like the universe was telling him to quit. Friends thought he'd never recover. But Abraham Lincoln wasn't fighting for personal victory. He was fighting for meaning. He famously said, "I am a slow walker, but I never walk back." Each failure, each loss, each heartbreak wasn't a dead end. It was a lesson. Every defeat carved resilience deeper into his soul, hardening his resolve and clarifying his purpose. Most people quit after one major failure, maybe two. Abraham Lincoln lost 8 elections over the course of his political life. 8 times voters looked at him and said, "No, thank you." 8 times he was told, "You're not good enough." He was dismissed as a gawky, unrefined country lawyer. His opponents mocked his appearance, his high-pitched voice, his humble origins. They saw him as an amateur, an idealist, a man out of his depth. But with every knockdown, he did something extraordinary. He got back up. Bruised, often broken-hearted, but always burning with an unshakable belief in his principles. He kept studying, kept speaking, kept fighting. He wasn't just learning how to win. He was learning how to lead, how to endure, how to connect with the common person, because he was one of them. He understood their struggles because he had lived them. And then came 1860. The political landscape was a minefield. The nation was fracturing over slavery. The established political parties were in chaos. The Republican Party, still relatively new, needed a candidate who could unite the North without completely alienating the border states. They needed someone with a strong moral compass, but a pragmatic mind. They needed someone who looked like a compromise, an outsider who hadn't made too many powerful enemies. They turned to the man everyone had dismissed, the 2-time loser for the Senate, the 1-term congressman, the failed shopkeeper from Illinois, and the impossible happened. Abraham Lincoln, the man who had failed more times than most people ever try, secured the Republican nomination, and then, against all odds, became the 16th President of the United States. It was the ultimate comeback, a testament to the power of relentless perseverance. The man who had been told no time and time again was now the leader of the nation. But his greatest trial had just begun. Lincoln's election was the final spark that ignited the fires of secession. Before he even took the oath of office, 7 southern states had left the Union. By the time he delivered his first inaugural address, the nation was on the brink of civil war. He inherited a house not just divided, but collapsing. This was a storm of leadership, unlike any an American president had ever faced. Many leaders would have responded with fury, with ego, with a desire to crush the opposition. But Lincoln stood firm, not with anger, not with pride, but with a deep, sorrowful purpose. In his inaugural address, he pleaded with the South, "We are not enemies but friends. We must not be enemies." He saw the conflict not as a fight for political dominance, but as a test of the very idea of America. A house divided against itself cannot stand, he had warned years earlier. And now, he was living inside that crumbling house, desperately trying to hold the beams together. The war came. It was brutal, bloody, and longer than anyone had imagined. The early years were filled with Union defeats. Lincoln cycled through general after general, searching for a commander who had the will to fight and win. He was criticized from all sides. Abolitionists said he was too slow to end slavery. Conservatives said he was a tyrant, trampling on the Constitution. The death toll mounted, reaching staggering numbers. The weight of it all was immense. You can see it in the photographs of him from 1860 to 1865. The energetic, hopeful face of the candidate becomes the deeply lined, weary, haunted face of the wartime president. Yet through it all, he never lost his moral clarity. The war, for him, evolved from a struggle to preserve the Union into a crusade for human liberty. With the Emancipation Proclamation, he transformed the conflict, declaring that the Union was now fighting for a new birth of freedom. At Gettysburg, on a field consecrated by the blood of thousands, he gave a 2-minute speech that redefined the American promise, envisioning a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He didn't just fight a war, he fought for the soul of a nation. From a dirt floor cabin to the White House, from failure to freedom, from rejection to revolution. When the war finally ended and the Union was preserved, Lincoln's work seemed complete. He spoke of healing, of binding up the nation's wounds, with malice toward none, with charity for all. He had guided America through its darkest hour and brought it to the dawn of a new era. And then, just days after the Confederate surrender, he was gone. A single gunshot in a theater ended the life of the man who had endured so much. But his death could not erase his legacy. In the end, the world didn't remember the failed business. It didn't remember the lost elections. It didn't remember the insults or the ridicule. It remembered his faith in the Union. It remembered his courage to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. It remembered his profound humanity, his compassion, his wisdom, and his unwavering belief in the better angels of our nature. Abraham Lincoln's life proves something powerful, something we all need to hear. You don't have to start strong, you just have to keep standing. Your beginnings do not define your destiny. Your failures are not final verdicts, they are stepping stones. The people who truly change the world aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who rise again and again and again. He wasn't born a legend, he became one, forged in the fires of adversity. Thanks for watching. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear that their struggles are not the end of their story. We'll see you in the next video.